Everybody, welcome back in here on the YouTube channel. I'm Phillip Jordan, Flash on College Football. Joining me as always on Thursdays, I am joined by Matt Lowe, the owner of lowdownsports.com. And Matt, we're in week 11. We only have a few more weeks left in the regular season. It does not feel like it, but we are coming off one heck of a week in the SEC. So I don't think this weekend's games will live up to that, but it should be an interesting week nonetheless.
Yeah, man. And these teams that won, in dramatic fashion or won in dominating fashion, however you want to call it, I mean, you still got to play the next week. So, as LSU, I mean, they got a tough game against Arkansas. So, now's not the time to pat yourself on the back. There's still some football left to be played. And that's the one thing about the SEC. It's a grinder, and no easy games, no easy victories. So still a lot of things left to happen, and there's still a lot to be played out.
Yeah, absolutely. Not everybody can be what Tennessee got after Alabama when they got UT Martin. These other teams, you got to get up and you play. We'll talk about that LSU Arkansas game that kicks off everything on Saturday. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of, because I haven't really talked about it yet, and we are recording this actually on Wednesday night for people who do not know. The college football rankings, the second one came out on Tuesday night. And if you're watching on YouTube, we got the rankings up on the screen. Just, Matt, you see that. You see, of course, Georgia number one, they jumped to one. Tennessee did fall to five. Alabama, they fell to nine. Just anything with that, it really jumps out to you with the latest rankings.
Man, I don't know why Clemson's number 10. That's a little surprising the way they got boat race, and they really haven't beaten anybody. I mean, not too major shocking there. I mean, I think all those teams are deserving where they are. I mean, I think it's and some of those teams are going to play each other, so I think it's just all going to play itself out. But yeah, Clemson being 10 is a little surprising.
Yeah, I think just looking at it, just looking at what they've done in the teams, I would have had Ole Miss. I would have Ole Miss ahead of Clemson. I would have dropped them further down than where they're at, just because of the complete domination from Notre Dame. That knocks that knocks the ACC out of it with Clemson. Clemson was their only shot, but they had to go undefeated, and especially losing the way they did really hurt the whole ACC the whole conference.
Yeah, and I had watched Clemson a couple of times this season. I just wasn't really impressed with them. And I was thinking about this the other day. Dabo Swinney's lost a lot of good coaches the last couple of years, and that's when you think about. And I know the Bama fans are all over Nick Saban. He should fire his coordinators and all this other stuff. But you think the amount of coaches that have been plucked from Nick Saban's staff over the years, and how he's continued the success that he's had, it's really impressive. But it's continuity is important, and especially guys that when you're in the heat of battle with certain guys, especially guys that you've done it with for a long time, you get to know what. I think there's a good rhythm there you establish as far as calling plays within games, and some guys are going to do things differently than others. But I just think, you really find out how good a coordinator is in these big ball games, and you lose your two best play callers, it's going to affect your team somehow or another, so that's why it's important to, I guess, from that standpoint, it's tough to just replace and pick and replace guys that are really good play callers.
Yeah, especially, and I think one thing you can look at it, he promoted from within. With that, he didn't go out and hire somebody new. And I kind of wonder if that's something he might want to consider during the off season, or will he roll with these guys again?
Yeah, I mean, because it's like I said, I mean, some guys, because like I said, when you're in a football game and you got so many seconds to call a play, I mean, you gotta know what you're doing. I mean, and I'm not necessarily blaming Alabama's losses for the play call, and I think that's a little immature to do that. I mean, let's face it, Alabama, their offensive line isn't that good. And Bryce Young, to be honest, if he wouldn't have made some of the plays that he's made by himself, Alabama's losses could be a lot worse. I mean, that one play that he scrambled around and threw the touchdown, I mean, that was an amazing play. I mean, and then against Texas, they would have lost against Texas if it wasn't for him scrambling around and making plays. Same thing against Tennessee. He kept them in the game. I mean, so, Alabama, and this goes back to the transfer portal. This goes back to today's college football player, the NIL stuff and all that. It's all like a culmination of things. I mean, just right now, they just don't have the same players and the depth that they have of their team.
Yeah, they don't, and you're right. I mean, I've said it, especially when they go on the road, they're not the same team away that they are in Tuscaloosa. And a lot of times, Bryce Young has to put the Superman cape on, and that was when he was put in that situation again against LSU. I mean, we saw it against Tennessee, and you saw it against Texas. I mean, this team, and you could reverse it and say they could be. There are a few points from being undefeated, but they're also a few points away from being 5-4. I mean, because Texas A&M had them to the end of the game. One or two plays go differently, we could be looking at a 5-4 team. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people are concerned. It's not that they've lost 2 games. It's just how the rest of the season has looked, and especially when they play away from home.
Yeah, and it's been the uncharacteristic stuff too, the penalties. That's been surprising. But I will say this too. I mean, like going on the road into an environment like Baton Rouge was last weekend, or like Athens was for Tennessee, and you see the Tennessee guys false start penalties and just the crowd. I mean, that's a tough place to play. It's a tough place to get your communication right. It's a tough place, just to operate in, and it's just difficult to win on the road in the SEC. I mean, that's just all there is to it. And it goes back to the consistency Alabama has performed at over all these years under Nick Saban. It's really, truly remarkable what they have accomplished, because this league, the SEC, is a hard league to operate and win in. And the margin of error is just so slim. And the amount of consistency that they've had under him has been remarkable. And like I said with the coaching changes, I mean, he gets a guy taken off his staff basically every year, one or two guys at least, and to replace those guys and plug and play per se, it's been remarkable. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about if Alabama beats Tennessee and then pulls out the win against LSU, they're undefeated. But yeah, they could have 4 losses as well. So, but the margin of error, man, that's playing in the SEC, and it is what it is.
Yeah, it is. And looking ahead to this weekend's game, you're talking about playing on the road, and that's a big one I want to look at first. Number 7 LSU, they're number 7 now in the college football playoff rankings. They are traveling to play Arkansas, who's coming off a 21-19 loss against Liberty. This is an 11 o'clock game. It'll be on ESPN. LSU comes in only a 3-point favorite, and I know Arkansas got beat last week, and they did not look good for most of that game. They put some points at the end and almost tied it up, but they looked sluggish. Their offense, they really didn't. They struggled running the ball. Only 144 yards rushing in the game. Rocket Sanders only had 60 in that one. But I do look at this. You're going to Fayetteville. You're going to Arkansas. It's an 11 o'clock kickoff. LSU is going to hear all week long. They've heard all week long how good of a team they are. On paper, you look at it, the way Arkansas's played, the way LSU's played right now, you think LSU should win this game. And I think they will. But I also feel like, Matt, this could be a dangerous game for LSU if they don't go into it with the right mindset.
You're right. I mean, and this is a rivalry game. These two teams, these two schools do not like each other, and there's been some historically amazing games when these two hook up to play. So, yeah, I mean, I was surprised how Liberty just stoned Arkansas's offense last weekend. I mean, I mean, I just that really took me by surprise. I mean, and I know Liberty's played pretty good defense, but I mean they shut them down. And I don't know if Arkansas just kind of overlooked that game or what, but they pretty much got whipped. But so like I said, this is a rivalry game. It's a home game. There's no excuse for Arkansas not being pumped up to play Saturday. So I think it's a very dangerous game for LSU, and I think Arkansas can win it. I mean, I'm like you. I'll give the edge to LSU because I think they're playing with a lot of confidence and they're scoring points. And I think that win last weekend really, really probably boosted their confidence. And I like the way LSU's operating on offense right now.
A matchup too with this game, and it's nothing. It's not the LSU offense, defense. I want to see how they use Harold Perkins against KJ Jefferson like they did with Bryce Young, because Harold Perkins, that is a dude. I mean, he's only a freshman.
Yes.
It's just amazing how good he's going to be when he leaves LSU, and LSU's got other guys on that defense too. But keeping him, paying attention to what KJ Jefferson's doing, I think is going to be big too on the LSU side on defense.
Yeah, didn't Matt House their coordinator? Defensive coordinator. Okay,
yes.
He came from the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, and wanted help. They won a Super Bowl while he was on that staff. What's the guy? What's the Chiefs coordinator? What's his name? I can't think.
Bidme or the defense coordinator.
Defensive coordinator, long time guy there.
I'm drawing a blank on his name because I think he was with the Giants.
Spagnuolo.
That's it.
Okay. And that guy's been one of the best defense coordinators in the NFL over the last few years. So what he has brought to that LSU team is first of all, a good scheme. You know, schematically, they run different stuff. But he's bringing a lot of exotic blitzes, you know, stunts. He's using his athletes like Ojulari, like Perkins, and he's bringing those guys in the pass rush game, and it's really been effective because those guys are two great athletes and they can get after the quarterback and they make plays every game doing that. So that's been a big boost to I think the LSU team. I mean, I know the other coordinator, he came from Cincinnati, and so he was captaining Cincinnati's offense when they had Desmond Ridder, and Jaden Daniels is a similar guy. So those coordinator hires for Brian Kelly were excellent, and they're, like I said, they're really playing with a lot of momentum right now.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I took a little victory lap on Twitter after that game Saturday night. I'll tell you why. So before the season kicked off, I ranked all the SEC coaches 1 through 14. Of course, I had Saban and Kirby at 1 and 2. I put Brian Kelly at 3. And I got a lot of heat for that on social media, on Twitter, because, hey, I put him ahead of Jimbo Fisher. Said, how are you going to put him ahead of Jimbo Fisher? I see your look. I'm watching on YouTube. Matt was just shaking his head when I just mentioned Jimbo Fisher's name. We'll get to him in a little bit at the end, the last game we've got here to preview. But I just selfishly, a little pride got me mad on Saturday night when LSU won that. I came on the show Tuesday and I just said, "Ha! I told y'all."
Well, heck, man, you asked me to give grades out between Napier and Kelly a couple weeks ago, and I gave Kelly a C. I mean, right now, I think that's looking like a mistake. So. I mean, you got to think, man, if they don't muff 2 punts and miss an extra point at the end of a game and get a field goal, I mean, they're close to outside the route of Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee beat them bad, but I mean, they should only have 1 loss right now.
Yeah, that's true. And then I still look at it, and I'm not making excuses. Tennessee was the better team that day, but for LSU, they fumbled the open kickoff in that game. And then there was a couple, and they missed on 3 4th downs in the first half. 2 of them were manageable if you either kick field goals or you get those. That's a different game. And then right before halftime, when they were down 20-7 on a 4th and 10, you go for it. Daniels gets sacked, and then Tennessee kicks a field goal, goes in 23-7 with a lot of momentum. Now, Tennessee was dominating that game. They outplayed LSU. I'm not saying they didn't at that point. But that game, too, in that first half, a lot of things went against LSU. So, like you said, this is a team, if things go the right way against Florida State, they're undefeated right now. And I just can't imagine what the conversation around Brian Kelly, not undefeated, one loss, and the talk around Brian Kelly would be even bigger right now.
Yeah, I mean, but like I said, hey, as you know, things can change quickly in a week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think last week told us that. I mean, so there's still football left to be played. They got a hard game this weekend. So we'll see what happens. There's still football left to be played, though.
Yeah, there is a couple other 11 o'clock games on Saturday. The other one will be Missouri at 4-5. Goodness gracious, they just keep losing these close games. And then they will be at number 5 Tennessee, coming off their first loss of the season. This game will be on CBS. Tennessee is a 20.5-point favorite. Matt, I look at this game. Missouri they have a good defense. They are one of the better defenses in the SEC. They have allowed only over 300 yards just once in the last 6 games. That was to Georgia. They lead the SEC in tackles for losses. Their defensive line does, but Tennessee's going to come here. Missouri won't have enough firepower. I look at Tennessee. They're going to look at the rebound off of last week. I just expect Tennessee to win this game pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, if they're focused, sure. I mean, it's like we talked about last week, though. What nobody had really figured out, how to stop this Tennessee offense. But I think Georgia kind of laid a little blueprint, and I think, as like I told you, it's the running game is very important to Tennessee's offense, and Georgia stymied that, and they kept Hendon Hooker in the pocket, and they hit him in the pocket. Because that guy, he sits in that pocket and throws the ball. And when Georgia gets teams in second, third, and long, you're feeding right into what they want to do, and the stunts, and and what they do defensively, and they hit Hendon Hooker and harassed him all game long, and that's the key. I mean, in Missouri, they play good run defense, so that's a matchup to watch in this game. I do think Tennessee will win the game, but if Missouri can bottle up Tennessee's run game, I think Jabari Small, he got a little banged up in that game last week on the shoulder. He got hit on the shoulder there. So if Missouri can bottle up Tennessee's run game, they could hang around in this game. But I give the edge to Tennessee for sure.
Yeah, it's just, I guess for me, I don't feel like Missouri can generate enough offense. That's another thing. Even if they can keep it, but then again, Missouri all year, except for Kansas State, they've been in all these games, and they just, and look, I don't know if you saw it, the call it in the Kentucky game with the punter situation. That was, I mean, I look at that, and I know people throughout the rule book, he was still in the tackle box, he was still in the punter position. But if I'm that Missouri defender, I see him picking up a ball, I'm going for a tackle, trying to get him on the ground. It was a bad way to end the game for Missouri last week against Kentucky.
Yeah, and they've had some bad endings so far.
Just think Auburn. I mean, just if the Auburn game had went, the running back had not fumbled it into the end zone. They're 5-4 instead of 4-5, and then you're looking at, okay, we can win one more game, we can get to a bowl game. Now you're 4-5. It's a wholly more difficult deal there. Vanderbilt at 3-6. They will be at Kentucky, number 24 Kentucky in the playoff rankings. They are 6-3. This is another 11 o'clock game. This will be on the SEC Network. Kentucky comes in this game as an 18-point favorite. The over/under is 48, so they're not expecting a lot of points in this one. Kentucky does play the rest of their games from here on out at home, so the last 3 games will be there at home in Lexington. Against Missouri last week, Levis played better, had 3 touchdown passes. Rodriguez went over 100 yards. Vandy's defense is bad. We keep saying every week, Matt, and I think it's true, but they keep losing games, so some people may look at the results and not understand it. But Vanderbilt, Clark Lee does have better players there. It's just he's got to get more better players. But what's interesting? Kentucky this year, we talk about Will Levis, Chris Rodriguez in this offense. They only average 23.6 points per game on the year. That's their average. I think they win this one. I mean, I'm pretty sure Kentucky wins this game. I'm thinking more like a 27-10 type deal because Kentucky's their offensive line struggles. I mean, Will Levis has been sacked more times this year than he was all last year. And that's saying something because he didn't play one game this year. But yeah, I mean, I probably rambled on about this one, but yeah, I think Kentucky handling wins is like 27-10, 27-7, somewhere in there. But
Yeah.
what is your thoughts on this game between Kentucky and Vanderbilt?
Well, I picked Vandy to beat South Carolina in one of the bonehead picks of the year last week. So I'm not picking Vandy again. I don't think anymore. And I just thought they might have a shot there. And yeah, they're young on defense. I mean, they're playing a lot of young guys, and so yeah, I like Kentucky pretty big here. But yeah, I mean, I big thing, like you said, with Kentucky's been their offensive line, which has normally been a strength the last couple of years. I mean, you can only get a quarterback can only get a hit so many times, you know. I mean, and so I like Kentucky pretty big here. I'll go I think they'll put up some points on Vandy. I say 34-14, something like that.
Okay, yeah. So hey, that would hit the over under of 48.
Yeah,
if
there
they
we
hit
go.
on that one, if they hit on that one. Then at 2:30, which this is the game of the day in the SEC. Number 9 Alabama, 7-2 now, will be at 11. Ole Miss is 8-1. Like I said, 2:30 CBS. They have Alabama listed as a 12-point favorite in this one. The over under is 63.5, and this is another road game for Alabama. And Matt, just looking at the psyche of Alabama, I mean, Nick Saban is the best coach of all time, and if he can get his players right for this situation, I believe he can do that. But I still wonder where they're going to be at because this team was pumped up before the season, and I bought into it that this was the best team to clear out, best team in college football coming to the year. You got Bryce Young coming back, you got Will Anderson coming back, the two best players probably in the country, and it's obviously 2 losses. You're pretty much out of the playoff hunt. Is a disappointment. And for Alabama, the last time they had more than 2 losses before Thanksgiving was 2010, which that year they lost to South Carolina, LSU, and also Auburn. Last time they had 2 losses for the SEC championship in the regular season was 19 when they lost to Auburn at the end of the year, and they lost to LSU that year. So I'm just kind of wondering, Alabama, where they're going to be at mentally going into this game, knowing now that they pretty much are not playing for a national championship anymore, unless something really crazy happens in front of them in the rankings.
Yeah, I mean, and look, that's some crazy things can happen. They have happened before. I mean, I've been shocked by their defensive play. I just thought Alabama was going to be really good on defense, you know, but their cornerback play is awful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they go and I don't know. I think Alabama is going to be able to score points on Ole Miss's defense. So I mean, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I see this as another high scoring game. I'm a little shocked that Alabama's favored by almost 2 touchdowns. I mean, I think that's a lot, but I also think too that, you know, LSU, their passing game was going to be effective against Alabama's secondary, kind of the way I thought Tennessee's passing game would be effective against Alabama's secondary. Ole Miss is more of a run-oriented team, you know, this year. I think they lead the league in rushing, or right up there with Arkansas. So, but I mean, they're going to have to throw the ball against Alabama too. Mm-hmm. I mean, and so we'll see what happens there. I think Ole Miss, I mean, I think they win the game, to be honest. I think it's going to be a tight game. I just think another road game for Alabama. The crowd's going to be into it. I think it's going to be a tough game for them to win. So I'm going to go with Ole Miss here.
And, you know, when you look at this matchup too, and last week Jaden Daniels obviously had a lot of success running, and not just on quarterback scrambles, on design run. That touchdown at the end before they went for 2 was all off a read play, and then the receivers and the running backs blocked well. Now, Jackson Dart's not as fast, and he's not as shifty as Jaden Daniels, but he has shown the ability to be a really good runner, and we know he can be an effective passer. Now, he takes chances, and then you got Judkins, you got Zach Evans in the backfield too as well. With that action there, I'm sure, obviously, and Ole Miss was off last week. They saw what LSU was able to do with the quarterback run game. I think that's a big thing in this game for Alabama. If Ole Miss has success at that, you're right. Alabama's defense has had issues this year. It is going to have to be a high-scoring game. And like we talked about, Bryce Young's going to have to wear that Superman cape because he's going to carry the load. And Lane Kiffin knows, okay, if I'm going to run where Will Anderson is not. That's going to be key. I mean, keeping a spy on Jackson Dart is going to be very important, I think, for Alabama in this game.
Yeah, I mean, having a week off before a big game is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Not only from a preparation standpoint, because you can see more, you have more time to prepare for an opponent, but your team has fresh legs. I mean, that's huge. That's huge in a big game down the stretch. So I think that's going to come into play. And like I said, in Alabama, couple of years. I mean, Ole Miss has given them a lot of problems here recently. Like last year's game, not so much, but the tempo, the pace, the running quarterback, that's always been things that have given Nick Saban's defenses problems. So, I mean, I think Ole Miss has got a great shot to pull the upset. I think some rain could be in the forecast too, which I think that would benefit Ole Miss. But I also think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to go off against Ole Miss's defense too. So I think there's going to be a shootout that could come down to whoever has the ball last.
Yeah, I'm with you. You know, I was wrestling with this, thinking about who I was going to pick. I think I'm going to agree with you. I think Ole Miss will win this game because I'm just not sure where Alabama's mind's going to be at going into this, because this team does not feel like they have the same mental makeup that past Nick Saban teams have. And going on the road against a good team, they've just shown this year that they have struggles in that. I think Lane Kiffin's going to have something special planned in this game. Now, I will say this. If you're an Auburn fan, you probably need to root for Alabama just to make sure that Ole Miss is not going to Atlanta if a certain somebody is going to be the next Auburn coach. I'm just saying that if you're an Auburn fan out there, you may actually want to root for Alabama in this one. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Ole Miss too on this one. At 3 o'clock, we won't spend much time on this one. You'll have South Carolina at 6-3 at 5-4 Florida. Like I said, 3 o'clock, SEC Network. Florida comes in as an 8-point favorite here. I look at this one as the two quarterbacks here, Spencer Rattler and Anthony Richardson, can wow you. They both have great arms, great athletic ability, but also turnovers. And neither of these teams can stop the run either. I mean, that's another thing. And then I think Marshall and Lloyd's going to have a big day for South Carolina if they stick with the running game. But you know what? I'm going to go with the home team here, man. I think Florida will win this thing. Anthony Richardson will have a big day because South Carolina is not a team that is really good at. They have a solid defense. They've shown that at times this season, but they don't put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And they do give up a lot of running, and Florida's actually one of the better SEC teams at running the ball. I think Florida. I think we're going to have a high-scoring game. I think Florida wins this one probably like 34-30.
Yeah, I'm going to take Florida too, and one day Florida looks lights out on offense. 1 week they look terrible. So they need to find a little bit more consistency. But yeah, I like them at home. And I mean, Anthony Richardson, he had a big game last week against A&M. I haven't been sold on South Carolina all year. Yeah, they can score points, but their defense hadn't really shown me anything. So I'm gonna go with the Gators getting the 6th win of the season. I think this will be a high scoring game. I'm gonna go like 42-35.
Okay, yeah, it'll be fun. I'll be
the over.
Oh yeah, it is. The over under is 59 on this one. So yeah, it should be fun watch to go back and forth. We may have two high scoring games going on at once with Alabama, Ole Miss, and then this one over on the SEC Network. I don't think we'll spend a lot of time on this one, talking about this one. Number 1, Georgia, 9-0. They will be heading to Stark Vegas to take on the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Georgia, they are a 16-point favorite, 6 o'clock kickoff over on ESPN. The over-under is 53.5. Look, I just think this game's going to go like the Alabama-Mississippi State game went. I just don't see Mississippi State really being in this one much, just because what the Georgia defense is going to be able to do. Because look, you watch that game with Tennessee, they don't miss tackles either. I mean, if it's a open field tackle, Georgia's going to make it. I just don't see Mississippi State being able to score points here. I know they're at home, but I think Georgia wins this. I think they win it big.
Yeah, and you know what, Phillip? I was kicking myself about 5 minutes into that Georgia-Tennessee game going, what in the hell was I thinking picking Tennessee? Because I've said that Kirby Smart, that dude, it's almost like he does the Jedi mind trick on his players sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we're not any good. We need to do this better. We need to do this better. But I'm going to tell you what, when it's time to play a big game, the Georgia Bulldogs come ready to play. And I think it showed last week having experience, having championship experience, playing in that big environment, playing in a game that's everybody's watching, playing in a game where you're slightly getting a little disrespected, because nobody was really talking about Georgia in that game. Mm-hmm. Everybody was picking Tennessee. Tennessee was the number one team. Tennessee couldn't be stopped on offense. And Georgia whooped that butt. Period. I mean, and they ran through them. They could have beat them worse than they did, I think. But it was just one of those. It was one of those like the boa constrictor, tightening the noose on the mouse type games. And Stetson Bennett, supposedly the Tennessee fans have been calling him all night. I don't know if you knew that or not, but that's why he did the call me thing when he scored his touchdown. But
I didn't know that. I was wondering what that was all about.
Yeah, they got his phone number and were calling him all night long. So I think they'll probably stop doing that after that butt whooping. But Georgia, I mean, it's been like when I saw them play against Oregon, I was like, that's the best team right there. And then a couple of games down, you saw them play against Missouri, and you're like, what is this? Saw them play against Kent State, and you're like, But I have a feeling they probably were preparing for the Tennessee Vols kind of all year long. I mean, and they went out and whipped them, and I think right now they're the top. They're clearly the top team in the country, no doubt about it.
Yeah, when I look at the rest of the top teams, honestly, the team that matches up against them, they're not going to see is Alabama. I mean, because Nick Saban, the Kirby relationship. I mean, that's the team I actually think could give Georgia the most trouble with Alabama. They're not going to see them now. Ohio State, to me, I think they're still the same team they were last year. I think they're kind of soft on the offense and defensive lines. Michigan doesn't I don't think, have enough firepower to go against them. TCU would be dominated up front. And then look, Tennessee sitting there 5. So I look at it, I'm like, when I look at it, I don't really think, I'm with you, that anybody can actually beat them.
Well, I do think Tennessee could beat them, but the way that game played out is Tennessee just kind of got ambushed.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that happens, but and the interception that number 5 for Georgia, what's his name? Ringo.
Yeah.
Ringo, the play that he made. Mm-hmm. Now, if Tennessee would have scored that play, that would have been a different ball game. That was a huge play in the game. But I think if Tennessee and Georgia played again, there would be some adjustments. And I think they could play again down the road. And but right now, I mean, Georgia, they need to be careful, though, Mississippi State. I mean, and look, Phillip, rain could come into play in a lot of games this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And weather. So that could be tricky. And I've always said if Mississippi State's hot, when Leach gets hot calling plays, he can be dangerous. And they have I don't think you're going to be able to beat Georgia lining up and running the ball. I think you're going to have to beat them throwing the ball. And because Georgia can stop the run. That's their MO. They've always been able to defend the run well. And like you said, they tackle well. And their tackling against Tennessee helped them beat Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee's a team where if you watch them throughout the year, I mean, they get behind the secondary. They score on a lot of basically unmatched plays. So in Georgia didn't let them get behind them, and they came up and hit them, and that's what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how that one goes, but it kind of feels like, I mean, when do we see this team get tested? Who knows? Maybe LSU in the SEC championship game. We'll see. If they match up, see what they can do with them. The last game, and I tell you what, man, I don't think I've ever been more excited to see 2 3-16s play each other. When Texas A&M and Auburn play this Saturday night at Jordan-Hare Stadium at 6:30, a sold-out Jordan-Hare Stadium for this Saturday. This will be on the SEC Network. Auburn is a 1.5-point favorite. The over-under on it is 4.5. I think this is a big game, potentially from buff running backs on the teams, all the running backs, all the running game all together. Devin Achane for Texas A&M. Look, Auburn's not good against run. And Texas A&M is now the worst team in the SEC against the run, giving up 215 yards per game on the ground. Of course, Auburn feed Tank Bigsby. They did a lot of good things against Mississippi State with Robbie Ashford in the run game, running some read option with him. And I just look at this one, Cadillac Williams, just the energy, the way the players they played hard for him. They did not play that way for Brian Harsin. And I believe last week, if Brian Harsin's the coach, they get blown out. That's a blowout in the second half. They don't come back. And this game being at Jordan-Hare, the first game back since Brian Harsin got fired, I'm telling you, man, I really believe they should play Go Crazy Cadillac, Go Crazy when they bring the team out, because this is going to be a loud crowd. Yes, these are 2, 3, and 16s. I finally can. I haven't been able to do this in a while. I'm picking Auburn. I think they win this thing by 2 touchdowns against Texas A&M, because Auburn has a lot of momentum, a lot of energy. And people may say this, yes. If people don't know, I am the Auburn writer for Last Word on College Football, so you can take that however which way you want to take it. I just feel a certain way about this game, and I feel like A&M's going the opposite direction now. Connor Wegman will be back. Jimbo Fisher said he will be playing at quarterback, so that is big. But I don't know. I feel like Auburn is just going to have so much energy, so much passion. Cadillac Williams leading them out on the field in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Hopefully, it will be a go crazy Cadillac, go crazy situation. But I just think Auburn's going to win this thing by 2 touchdowns.
I hear you, buddy. Well, hey, man, it was funny watching Carnell. He probably walked about 7 miles on the sideline Saturday. You were hoping the team would pull that one out for him. Mississippi State, though, they came back and fought hard too. You got to tip their hat.
Oh, yeah.
But it was good to see new plays, new players. Jeffrey Mamba, the big, massive defensive lineman, he comes off the edge, has a strip sack. I mean, dude looks like Reggie White. Where's he been? Where's this guy been? I mean, like, that was the thing to me. It was like, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting the same result. And that was the thing that I noticed with Auburn. Is like, you never saw any new players. You hardly saw any new plays. You hardly saw any new wrinkles, with play calling. I thought the Auburn staff, they did a great job with the game plan. And they stuck to running the ball. They had to design runs for Robbie Ashford. I mean, and when you got a guy that can run the ball like that, kind of like Jaden Daniels, why not design a running play for them? Where you can either do it, or he could pop up and do an RPO off that play. I mean, just that, and that's the thing I think a lot of Auburn fans were just excited to see, is just different stuff. And success doing different things. And so, I mean, I don't know. I thought that was very interesting. And Auburn staff is a veteran staff. I mean, those guys, that Ike Hilliard and Jimmy Brumbaugh and, Will Friend. I mean, those guys have been on some pretty successful staffs. And I have to think sometimes, watching the games that we watched with Auburn over the last couple of years, some of the coaches on the sideline are probably like, what the hell is he thinking? Going for a 4th and 10 when you have a big lead against LSU at home, or going for a 4th and 1 when you can kick a field goal and take a lead with under 2 minutes to go in the game. Just things like that. So, but it was an inspired effort. I'm with you. I think somehow Auburn pulls out a win here. I think the crowd's going to really be behind them and be behind Carnell. I'm with you. I think Robbie Ashford has a big game, and I think Tank and Jarquez Hunter have big games, and Auburn wins. Don't know about 2 touchdowns, but I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I'll go like 35-30, something like that.
Yeah, I think anybody listening can obviously tell I am buying what Carnell Cadillac Williams is selling right now. And the thing, I'll say this final on this game that was very encouraging. I think just with him, you didn't, because when players made a mistake on Saturday night against Mississippi State, they came to the sideline. He was there to embrace them. He put his arm around them. He coached them. you never saw Brian Harsin doing stuff like that.
Mm.
He was very emotionless. Every now and then you saw a little bit of emotion. There's one game he threw the headset down, but you didn't see that. And it's just obvious that those players have a different connection with Carnell Williams than they did with Brian Harsin, and that just showed against Mississippi State.
Well, and Carnell's such a figurehead at Auburn too. I mean, the guy was a great player. I mean, so I think that goes a long way with other players. But yeah, I mean, look, I think fans, especially fans, they like to see their coach show a little bit of emotion. I think LSU fans are getting a little upset with Brian Kelly because he just kind of stands over there and every once in a while he'll get fired up. I mean, I think there's a difference between having a calming demeanor on the sideline, and how you present yourself on the sideline. I mean, you don't want your head coach being a spaz, but at the same time, when something goes wrong or somebody gets a personal foul penalty, go over there and get in their face, or if, like you said, or if they didn't make a mistake, pat them on the back, say, hey, let's go. Just keep your head up, because you don't want your team over there having their heads hanging the whole time. I mean, you don't want a team that looks defeated. You want a team that stays in the game and keeps fighting. So it was a good thing to see Carnell doing that. And like you said, I mean, I think that goes for the amount of respect that the players have for him.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see all these games on Saturday. And Matt, this has been fun as always, having you on to preview all these games. We went a little bit longer this one we normally do. We've now gone over 40 minutes, but it's always good conversation. But before we get out of here, let the listeners and viewers let them know about what's going on with you and lowdownsports.com.
Yeah, I have my SEC rankings up, so check them out. I'm going to have my lowdown up on Friday. Of course, I'll put this up on my website as well. And I've just started covering Auburn basketball for Field Level Media. So I had preview and recap. That's on fieldlevelmedia.com. And I wrote the preview today for their upcoming game against South Florida. And I'll be covering that game Friday night, and I'll have the recap it usually gets up about 20 minutes after the game. So excited about doing that. Also working on Memphis Grizzlies stuff too. And so doing that. So yeah, check out lowdownsports.com for my national picks on Friday and my SEC rankings.
All right. Everybody go check it out. Go over to fieldlevelmedia.com. I've checked out stuff that's great content over there. Especially stuff that Matt's got going on over there, and go check it out. And Matt, we'll do this again next week. Next week won't be as fun though, because we get to predict the games of the worst weekend of the season in SEC when everybody goes out of conference the week before the rivalry weekends. But I'm sure we'll have some good stuff to talk about. But look forward to it, Matt, and thanks again for coming on for another week.
Hey, appreciate it, Phillip. Take care, bud.